Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Khoj Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation is the 23rd Ashtapadi, Maj Mahalla Tija. Tere Bhagat Sohey Sachai Darbare, Gur ke sabad naam savare, sada anand rahe din rati, gun keh guni samavਣਿਆ। ਹਾਂ ਵਾਰੀ ਜੀਓ ਵਾਰੀ, ਨਾਮ ਸੁਣ ਮਨ ਵਸਾਵਣਿਆ। ਹਰ ਜੀਓ ਸੱਚਾ ਊਚੋ ਊਚਾ, ਹਉ ਮੈਂ ਮਾਰ ਮਿਲਾਵਣਿਆ ਰਹਾਓ। ਹਰ ਜੀਓ ਸਾਚਾ ਸਾਚੀ ਨਾਈ, ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦੀ ਕਿਸੈ ਮਿਲਾਈ। ਗੁਰ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਮਿਲੇ ਸਹਿ ਵਿਛੜੈ ਨਾਹੀ, ਸਹਿਜੇ ਸੱਚ ਸਮਾਵਣਿਆ। ਤੁਝ ਤੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਕਛੂ ਨਾ ਹੋਏ, ਤੂੰ ਕਰ ਕਰ ਵੇਖੈ ਜਾਣੈ ਸੋਏ। ਆਪੇ ਕਰੇ ਕਰਾਏ ਕਰਤਾ, ਗੁਰਮਤਿ ਆਪ ਮਿਲਾਵਣਿਆ। ਕਾਮਣ ਗੁਣਵੰਤੀ ਹਰ ਪਾਏ, ਪੈ ਪਾਏ ਸੀ ਗਾਰ ਬਣਾਏ। ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਸੇਵ ਸਦਾ ਸੁਹਾਗਣ, ਸਚ ਉਪਦੇਸ ਸਮਾਵਣਿਆ। ਸ਼ਬਦ ਵਿਸਾਰਣ ਤਿਨਾ ਠੌਰ ਨਾ ਠਾਓ, ਭ੍ਰਮ ਭੂਲੇ ਜਿਉ ਸੁੰਝੇ ਕਰ ਕਾਉ। ਹਲਤ ਪਲਤ ਤਿਨੀ ਦੋਹੈ ਗਵਾਏ, ਦੁਖੇ ਦੁਖ ਵਿਹਾਵਣਿਆ। ਲਿਖਦਿਆਂ ਲਿਖਦਿਆਂ ਕਾਗਦ ਮਸ ਖੋਈ, ਦੂਜੇ ਪਾਏ ਸੁਖ ਪਾਏ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ। ਕੂੜ ਲਿਖੈ ਤੈ ਕੂੜ ਕਮਾਵਹਿ, ਜਲ ਜਾਵੈ ਕੂੜ ਚਿਤ ਲਾਵਣਿਆ। ਗੁਰਮੁਖ ਸੱਚੋ ਸਚ ਲਿਖੈ ਵਿਚਾਰ, ਸੇ ਜਨ ਸੱਚੇ ਪਾਵੇ ਮੋਖ ਦੁਆਰ। ਸਚ ਕਾਗਦ ਕਲਮ ਮਸਾਵਣੀ ਸਚ, ਲਿਖ ਸਚ ਸਮਾਵਣਿਆ। ਮੇਰਾ ਪ੍ਰਭ ਅੰਤਰ ਬੈਠਾ ਵੇਖੈ, ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦੀ ਮਿਲੈ ਸੋਈ ਜਨ ਲੇਖੈ। ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਮਿਲੇ ਵਡਿਆਈ, ਪੂਰੇ ਗੁਰ ਤੇ ਪਾਵਣਿਆ। The third Nanak, Guru Amar Das, begins by asserting that Gur ke sabad naam savare. So it is through or by the discourse of the enlightener that the faithful devotee is transformed by self-knowledge. Tere Bhagat Sohey Sachai Darbare, Gur ke sabad naam savare. Naam savare is to be transformed by self-knowledge. So clearly the transformation is that of the mind, which transcends the ego and enters into the realm of the true court. Tere Bhagat Sohey Sachai Darbare. Darbare, literally the court. And this is here a reference not to any physical court, but to the inner core of a being, the heart, so to speak, where our self is resplendent. So think about this as being another dimension of one's consciousness that is attained through self-knowledge. And in that true court of the heart, the devotee, the true devotee, the Bhagat, looks beautiful. Sohey Sachai Darbare. What does looking beautiful mean? It means that they possess pleasing qualities. And having cultivated divine attributes and realized the unitary experience of the self, they live in bliss. Sada anand rahe din rati. So that's the process. How vari jiyo vari, naam sun man vasavanya. Again, salutations, as is customary in these Ashtapadis. The Rahau begins with a salutation. Again, tipping of the hat, so to speak. Hats off to those who have heard the discourse of self-knowledge. and who have taken it to heart. How wari jio wari, who naam sun man vasavanaya, taking it to heart, transforming. They have realized the eternal supreme. Har jio sacha ucha ucha, realization that the har, the self, is eternal and is supreme, ucha ucha. And how have they done it? Haume mar milavanaya, by negating their haume. So negation of haume is the key to self-realization. It's something that we all need to contemplate. What does it really mean to negate or kill something that is intangible, not material? Is it really killing like you would a physical thing? Or is it something that you expand, transform? Harjio sacha sachi nai. Gur prasadi kise milai. Rare is that experience. Rare is that experience, kise, of imbibing Gur wisdom. Guru Prasadi kise milai. And then realizing that Harjio Sacha Sachi Nai, that the eternal herself is indeed our true identity, and then harmonizing with its writ, recognizing that the self that is playing out within me is also the self that is playing out outside of me. The writ, hukam. Hukam is within and without. And those who have realized, self-realized through Guru wisdom, do not go astray, for they have merged into the self with spontaneous ease. Guru sabad mile se vichhade nahi. You don't regress, in other words. Once you reach that stage, you do not regress. And with spontaneous ease. Sahaje sach samavanaya. Sahaje has some connotations. One is spontaneous, natural ease, a state of balance. But then there is also the meaning that at its root means inborn, something that arises with something. So this state of natural ease can be thought of as arising naturally with the self. So when the self is realized, the mind is at natural ease, in balance, in other words. So think of it as an expansion of consciousness, whereby the transcendental realm is being experienced through intuitive awareness. The center of one's experience becomes a blissful experience, because at this point, all resistance, symbolized by haume, gives way to complete receptivity. So this is important to remember. Haume signifies resistance. Hukam, the self, signifies harmony. And these are in constant tension. So when you transform through Guru Ka Sabad, it is the haume that is then expanded, so to speak, to become like the self. And then all resistance gives way to acceptance of the way things and events wish to emerge. No longer are you pushing back and getting frustrated in the process. Tujte bahar kich na hoye, tu kar kar vekhe jane soye, ape kare karaye karta gurmat aap milavane. Now this is the realization. That is the wisdom, that the doer self is all doing and all causing, and that there is no domain outside the self. This is what causes resistance to breakdown. So now how is this self-realized? This is what the Shabad turns to. Kaman gunavanti har paaye peh paaye sigar banaye. So the self is realized by those who are passionately devoted and adorn themselves with virtues. Kaman gunavanti har paaye. Kaman, often translated as a spouse, but here the indication is to have the passion for something. It's desire. So the self is realized obviously by those who are passionately devoted to a cause. You can't just acquire something without having some passion for it. So therefore, the Guru is telling us that common gunavanti har paaye. Har kinnu milda hai? To the common, the person who's motivated, who has the desire. And divine awe and love is their sentiment. Cigar, which we translate as makeup, also means sentiment. So these are the qualities. You have to have passion, you have to have devotion, you have to have love, and you have to have these sentiments. And then you follow the eternal wisdom of the Satgur. That's how you bridge the abyss between Haume and the Har Self. And now here, in the 5th section, the Guru speaks about those who do not take this path, who abandon or have not stepped onto the path of Gurmat. Sabad visaran tina thaur na thao. They lose their way. Thaur na thao. And they fall prey to delusion and go astray. Paramapule. And their fate is much like the crow that settles in an abandoned house only to return disappointed. The idea here being that you are really looking for salvation or looking for the self in the wrong places. You're not going to find them there except through Gurmat. So what the Guru is saying is, Halat palat tini dome gavaya. They have lost the here and the thereafter, and live a life of distress and anxiety. Dukhe dukha vihavanaya. So halat palat dome gavaya needs a little attention. We've translated it as the here and hereafter being lost. It should be borne in mind that commonly in translations, halat palat has been translated as this life and the next. Our suggestion would be to treat it as a figure of speech, to imply that if we wish a pleasant future, we should invest in the right course of conduct or the right course of action, or attune to the right path or acquire the right knowledge. लिखदियां कागद मस खोई दूजे पाए सुख पाए न कोई कूड़ लिखे ते कूड़ कमावे जल जावे कूड़ चित लावणिया. Kूड़ चित लावणिया means if you are going to apply yourself to false ideas, what is your fate going to be? So the Guru says much paper and ink has been wasted in writing about how to attain self-realization. Likhdiyan kagad mas koi. If you write falsehood, the Guru says, you will practice falsehood. Kood likhe, then kood kamave. And if you fix your mind on falsehood, kood chit lavaniya, you will perish in the process. The comfort and bliss of self-knowledge cannot be attained by loving the other, meaning following the wrong path, following the ego. The other meaning the ego. Duje pae, sukha pae na koi. So here again, the allusion to paper and ink is a pointer to the abundance of scriptural texts claiming to show the right way. Writing and practicing falsehood and perishing in the process can be understood in one of two ways. falsehood as opposed to the truth may imply the application of wrong ideas and methods, which we have suggested, because the gurus were very pointed, and very sharply criticized ideas, doctrines, and practices, especially those that were centered around pilgrimages, idol worship, and chanting. In other words, external practices, because the fundamental difference is that this is not an external practice. It has to deal with the mind. No amount of pilgrimage, no amount of idol worship, no amount of chanting is really going to make a difference to the mind. In fact, it will only serve to harden the habits of the mind. So duja can also be seen as the implications of the ego and its sensory delusions, because the ego gets trapped in the maze of transitory and fleeting experiences from which there is no escape except for Gurmat. So those who turn to Gurmat find freedom or release. Se jan sache paave mokh dwar. Release. Release from this mental constriction, from the self-perpetuating maze of transitory experience. That is really what the freedom is from. And this obviously is done by turning to Gur wisdom, the true doctrine of Gurmat. Gurmat sacho sachalike vichar. So for them, it's another way of saying that for the Bhagats, for them, self-knowledge is the paper, self-knowledge is the pen, and self-knowledge is the inkpot. Sachakagad kalam masamani sach, which is inscribed on the paper of their mind by the pen of Guru wisdom. This is a beautiful metaphor. And so it is that they remain immersed in the self. So it is not so much about reading scriptural texts, because when you read Gurbani, which is in textual form, it will tell you that you have to read the book of the mind. Man ki patri vachiye pai. Guru Amar Das, whose passage we are considering, in fact cautions us that we should read the book of our mind. And here's the conclusion, the wisdom that has been gained. Mera prab antar baitha vekhe. The self is seen seated within as the indweller when the gift of self-knowledge is received. Nanak naam mile vadiyai pure gur te paane. From the perfection, which is the gur. Then the self is seen seated within and without. And this happens through the benevolence of the Gur Enlightener, in that our accounts are settled. Settling of accounts means one has found a harmony with Hukam. A couple of takeaways that we can take is the key to self-realization is Gur Sabad, the discourse of the Enlightener. And it is available to us in textual form, although we have just mentioned that we will then have to proceed beyond the text. And Gurbani will teach us the art and science of how to overcome our blind spot, which is our conditioned pattern of behavior, which we call the ego or haume, and connect to the self, which is the agency of transformation that is inherent in us. The self enables us to shatter our conditioned consciousness. It is that part of us that is rooted in the timeless, unseen world. So remember, there is a part of us that is timeless and unseen, and there is a part of us that is visible and manifest. It is the unseen that holds the key to the ultimate success in life. And so the self and the ego are polar opposites, and they create this tension that we call the mind. On that note, until the next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.